Stephen Connor. I'm Fellow in English at Peterhouse and I work on 20th century literature.
So to start us off with, could you talk us through the English course at Cambridge?
Well, the English course is fundamentally a very historical course. It runs from the 14th century, even earlier if you have specialist interests, 14th century through to the present day. The aim is that we give students as much exposure and experience of different kinds of writing written in different kinds of circumstances as we possibly can. The first 2 years are that a series of historical papers that take students through that long story. The third year is more focused. Students can write an individual dissertation on a subject of completely their own choice. There's a special paper on tragedy, and there is a number of optional papers including topics like visual culture and post-colonial literature. The most important difference between the Cambridge syllabus, which we call the tripos, after the name for a three-legged stool, which really signifies the 3 years of the course, the most important thing about it is that we don't have courses of study in which all the students are following the same curriculum together. We have papers, and within those papers that might have quite dreary sounding names like Literature 1300 to 1500, students are free to construct their own itinerary and focus to a very large degree on the writers and the texts that actually interest them. So there can be 200 students in Cambridge really constructing 200 different kinds of routes through this material.
So when students apply, the first thing that they need to think about is their personal statement. What kinds of things do you like to see in a personal statement?
Well, the thing to remember about the personal statement is that it's a chance to put your stamp on proceedings, and you know, it's actually a way of scripting at least part of the interview, because anything in your personal statement that is interesting or fresh or distinctive is going to stand out and is going to suggest a topic for conversation. That will probably be more likely to be something different from or to the side of the books that you're studying for A-level or that you've studied before. It's likely to be something that bears on your interest in English. We don't really need to be convinced that you're interested in English, but we're interested in what else you're interested in. So it's not a bad idea, I think, sometimes to think about the connections that you might have been making between your study of English and your study of whatever else you're doing alongside that. And it's really important to try to write it well, which is to say, to write it in a fresh and individual way. If you talk about your passion for Shakespeare, well, good luck, but you're going to be one of at least 350 people who will tell us that.
So the next thing that students need to think about is the pre-interview admissions assessment, the ELAT. Can you talk about how we use the ELAT in the admissions process?
Yes, the English Literature Admissions Test, as the acronym stands for, is just one of a series of bits of evidence and indication that we have at our disposal that we're really paying attention to in making our decisions about who to offer places to. It's only one. There are references, there might be written work, schoolwork that applicants will send us. There will of course be the interview. So it's just part of the picture, and I would say that it's hardly ever determining. It's hardly ever the thing on which everything stands or falls. It's not well enough appreciated, I think, that in Cambridge we interview most of the people who apply to study English.
So the next part of the admissions process is the interviews. Can you talk a little bit how the interviews are structured for English? So
in Peterhouse, this is true in most Cambridge colleges, applicants have 2 interviews. Usually on the same day, they might be spaced out, and they'll be about 25 minutes long. These will be with 2 separate pairs of interviewers. The interviewers will be fellows in the college. A fellow is a name for a teacher in an Oxford or Cambridge college. Fellows of the college teaching English, but there will also be people from the admissions team who might have specialisms in other humanities subjects. So we will draw on the personal statement. There might be something interesting or arresting to start from there. We might talk about text studied at A-level, we're always very interested to know what else people are reading. If there are things that applicants are reading alongside their formal schoolwork, we're always very interested in that. We will sometimes ask applicants to read a piece of a very short passage in advance, maybe just 15 or 20 minutes before, and we might use that to focus some discussion. So that's broadly it. There isn't time for very much. Usually we get to ask about 4 or 5 questions in 20 minutes, and then it's done.
And so what are you looking for from the students and their responses to these questions?
What we're looking for is an applicant's engagement, their capacity not just to answer the question, but to follow up on that answer and to reflect on some of the implications or consequences or alternative examples that they might bring to bear. So it's very much a matter not of what you know or what you've prepared, but what you're able to do with your thinking and reading. That's why we aim to make the interview quite enjoyable, because we want to find out if you're the sort of person who really enjoys reasoning and reflecting in that kind of way collectively.
And then finally, why should students apply to Peterhouse for English?
Well, the official answer is that when we ask students, as we routinely do at the end of their 3 years of study, whether they are glad with the college that they went to or they wish they'd been to another one, they always say they are. So the official answer is all the colleges are as good as each other. However, Peterhouse has some very distinctive features. I would always want to say to an applicant, well, you might want to think about how close you are to the faculty or the department, which is where you'll be going. That's where the library is, it's where you'll be meeting lots of other students in the university, and where the lectures are. We're 10 minutes away from the Sidgwick site where the arts departments are in Peterhouse, and although we are just about the smallest college in terms of our kind of spatial footprint and in terms of the number of students, we have one of the largest gardens in the centre of Cambridge, and that's an absolute godsend whether you want to, rehearse a play in the summer or just sit under a tree reading some Shakespeare.